Episode 1, The Whisper in Ward 9. I still remember the smell, disinfectant, and something else. Something old, like wet paper, or skin left too long in the dark. When I first arrived at St. Delora Hospital, the director smiled too much. He said I was the perfect fit for the night shift in Ward 9, but he never explained why the ward had been closed for years. They reopened it just for me. Soft echo of footsteps. A door creaks open. Ward 9 was different from the others. Longer, darker. Every fluorescent light buzzed like it was straining to stay alive. The hallway walls were yellowed with age, and every nameplate outside the rooms had been wiped clean. No patients yet, they said. Just prepare the space. But when I walked past room 917, something whispered my name. Not loudly. Not from behind. It came from inside the room. Beat. Silence. Then a faint breath. Clara. I froze. It wasn't the kind of whisper that startles you. It was the kind that remembers you. I turned on the lights. The bed was empty, sheets still folded. The monitors were off, but the chart at the end of the bed had a name written in faded ink. Patient Clara H. admitted 3 years ago. Status deceased. I laughed at first. Nervous, stupid. Some intern must have left a joke behind. But when I picked up the chart, the paper was warm, and someone had drawn a small fingerprint in the corner, still wet. Mine. Static hum rises, then fades. I told myself I was just tired. The first night shift always does that, tricks your brain. But as I turned to leave, the intercom crackled to life. Welcome back, Nurse Clara. No one called me that. No one should have known my name yet. The ward hadn't even been connected to the main PA system. I ran to the nurse's station, but the control panel was dark, unplugged. Still, the speakers in every room started to hiss softly, like 1,000 breaths behind a curtain. Then I heard it again. A voice, low and trembling, as if it was learning to speak. You left us here. You promised you'd come back. I looked around, empty halls. The fluorescent lights above room 917 flickered, and for half a second I saw movement through the glass window. A shadow sitting on the bed, head tilted toward the door. Monitor beeps once, long tone. The next morning, I reported it. They checked the cameras, the logs, the monitors. Nothing. Ward 9 didn't even have power connected until the following day, they said. The director smiled again, same as before. Then he placed a file in front of me, closed it gently and said, You've done good work here before, Clara. Welcome home. I didn't understand what he meant. Not then. But when I got home that night, there was a hospital wristband on my kitchen table. Old, cracked, with my name printed on it. And below it, a date. Admitted 3 years ago. Sound cue. Fading heart monitor. One last whisper. Don't leave again. We're still waiting in Ward 9. Episode 2. The patient with no pulse. They told me Ward 9 would receive its first real patient tonight. The director said it with that same frozen smile, like he'd been waiting for this moment longer than I'd been alive. Just one patient, Nurse Clara, room 917, room 917, the same room that whispered my name. Footsteps echo. The sound of a curtain being drawn open. When I entered, the air felt heavy, thicker somehow, like breathing underwater. The man in the bed looked ancient, but not in the way old people do. His skin was pale, stretched thin over his bones, as if he had been asleep for centuries and the world forgot to wake him. The monitors beside him were dead. No lights, no beeps, no pulse. But his chest rose and fell, slowly, rhythmically. I checked his wrist. Nothing. No heartbeat, no warmth, just stillness. And then, you came back. His eyes opened. They were completely black. Not like pupils, like ink poured over glass. I stumbled back, nearly pulling the IV stand with me. The old man smiled, dry lips cracking. Don't be afraid, Clara. You're the one who made me like this. I wanted to run, to scream, but the name, my name, held me in place. No one here should know me that well. I tried to pull myself together to sound professional. What? What do you mean? He blinked, slow, deliberate. 3 years ago, you said the heart doesn't need to beat, if the memory keeps it alive. Soft electric hum builds. I reached for the monitor cables, trying to connect him, prove he was still human. The moment the wires touched his skin, the screen flickered to life. Patient, unknown. Vitals. Brain activity. Active. His heart monitor stayed flat. But the brain waves spiked, higher, faster, until the machine screeched in static, and within that static, I heard it again, my voice, laughing, whispering something I couldn't remember. Whisper layer, he doesn't need a pulse if he remembers your name. I yanked the plug. The lights in the ward dimmed instantly, one by one, until only the emergency glow remained. The man's mouth moved in the dark, but the voice came from the speakers above me. We all remember you, Clara, every one of us. My knees gave out. I pressed my hands against my ears, but it didn't help. The voices came from inside my head now, overlapping, hundreds of them, murmuring fragments of memories that didn't belong to me. Surgical rooms, screams, my own hands holding a scalpel. Then silence. Beep. One long tone. Then flatline. When I looked up again, the bed was empty. No sheets, no body. Just a faint outline like someone had burned the shape of a man into the mattress. The only thing left was his chart. No name, no vitals. Only a single handwritten note in red ink. You forgot what you did in Ward 9. We didn't. I tried to leave that night, but every hallway led me back to room 917. Every door opened to that same empty bed, and just before dawn, when I finally found the exit, the automatic doors opened for me. But the voice from the intercom whispered, "Clara, your shift isn't over yet." Sound cue. Heartbeat resumes. But it's not hers. Episode 3. The Doctor Who Never Left. The nights in Ward 9 began to stretch. Time no longer moved the way it should. Sometimes I'd blink, and hours would vanish. Other times, I'd swear I'd been standing still for days, but that night, time stopped entirely. It was 2:47 a.m. when I first saw him, a tall man in a white coat walking slowly past the nurse station. His posture was stiff, deliberate, like every movement was practiced, rehearsed. He carried a metal tray of instruments, gleaming under the sickly light. Scalpel, forceps, bone saw. At first I thought he was another night doctor from a different wing. But when I called out, "Doctor? You're not supposed to be in here after hours." He didn't turn around. He just kept walking toward operating room 9A. The problem was, 9A didn't exist, not on any map, not in the new blueprints the director gave me. Footsteps echoed down a distant corridor. I followed him. The air grew colder the closer I got, so cold I could see my breath. And when he pushed open the door, I saw a room that shouldn't have been there. Surgical lamps hung from the ceiling, flickering like candles. The walls were covered with photographs, old black and white images of patients, their faces blurred or scratched out. And at the center of the room was an operating table, still wet with something dark. The doctor stood over it, whispering, "She's almost ready." I tried to speak, but my throat felt frozen. Then he turned. His face was wrong, not deformed, just too perfect, like someone had painted on a memory of a man instead of a real one. Eyes blank, skin waxen. "Clara," he said softly, "you shouldn't be awake yet." I stepped back. "Who are you?" He smiled, small, tender, almost sorrowful. "You used to call me father." Long pause. Faint heartbeat sound. I blinked, and suddenly he was gone. The table was empty. The instruments spotless. No photographs, no blood. Nothing but the cold hum of the fluorescent light. But on the floor, near where he'd stood, lay a surgical mask. Old, yellowed with age. My hands trembled as I picked it up, and saw the name stitched into the lining, Dr. Harold H., the same last initial as mine. The next morning, I went to the director's office. I told him about the doctor, the operating room, everything. He listened without blinking, then opened a drawer and handed me a faded newspaper clipping. "Fire destroys St. Delora operating wing, lead surgeon among the dead. Dr. Harold H. Beloved physician and father to staff surgeon Dr. Clara H." I felt the blood drain from my face. I wanted to deny it, say it wasn't true, but the photo below the headline was me, younger, standing beside the man I saw last night. "You see, Clara," the director said, folding the paper, "he never left this place. Neither did you. You just stopped remembering." Sound cue, slow, rising static. When I returned to Ward 9 that evening, room 9A was gone. The hallway ended with a solid wall, freshly painted white. But if you pressed your ear against it, you could still hear the faint sound of metal instruments clinking, and a man humming softly, The same lullaby that had haunted the intercom nights before. Whisper, she's almost ready. Just one more incision. I didn't sleep after that. I couldn't, because every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face leaning over mine, scalpel in hand, smiling. Episode 4, The Wall That Breathed. It started with a sound, a slow, damp inhale, like the walls themselves were trying to breathe. I thought it was the plumbing. This place is old, decaying, always whispering. But that night, the sound came from inside room 915, the one no one ever used. Soft footsteps. The squeak of a door opening. The lights flickered as I stepped in. The paint on the walls was peeling, curling into thin rolls like dead skin. But behind the cracks, there was something darker. A faint, pulsing rhythm. I pressed my ear against it. Long pause. And I swear, I heard a heartbeat, not fast. Not human. Just a slow, heavy thud, echoing from deep inside the wall. Then a voice. So faint it barely existed. Clara, I stumbled back. My name again, always my name. It came from inside the wall, from beneath the plaster, the pipes, the structure itself. I called for help. No one answered. The intercom was dead, the lights buzzed like dying insects. And then, the wall exhaled, a gust of air, damp and cold, smelling like iron and rot. It brushed my face, soft and deliberate, like the breath of something ancient waking from a coma. I reached out without thinking. The surface under my fingers wasn't hard anymore, it was warm. And when I pressed harder, it moved. The wall flexed, as if 1,000 muscles shifted beneath it. Then, the faintest tremor, and I saw it. Faces, dozens of them, half-formed, pressing out from the plaster. Eyes, mouths, the contours of skin just below the surface. They writhed in silence, opening and closing their lips as if gasping for air. And in the center, a woman's face. Mine. Rising static. Distant whispering overlaps. I fell back, choking on the air, watching as the wall settled again, the faces melting away into smooth white. But I still heard their breathing, synchronized with mine. In, out, in, out. Every exhale brought back a memory. Flashes of something I couldn't fully recall. An operating table. A patient screaming. Hands, my hands, covered in red. I ran. Down the hall, past the flickering lights, past the ward where no one slept anymore. But no matter how far I went, the sound followed. That deep, wet heartbeat. When I finally reached the elevator, I slammed the button over and over. The doors creaked open, and I froze. Inside, the walls were breathing too. The metal panels pulsed gently, expanding and contracting, as though the elevator itself had lungs. Faint whisper inside the elevator. Don't run from what you built. I backed away slowly. The elevator closed, swallowing the whisper whole. When I returned to the nurse station, I found something waiting for me. A note written in red ink on hospital paper. The walls remember what we bury. Below it, someone had drawn a small diagram, a map of Ward 9. But there was a new line added, one that hadn't been there before. A corridor branching off behind room 915. Labeled in shaky handwriting, the memory hall. Sound cue. Heartbeat stops. Silence. Then, a deep inhale. From the walls themselves. Welcome back, Clara. Episode 5. Code White. Code White, Ward 9, missing child. The announcement cut through the silence like a knife. It echoed down the empty corridor, bouncing off every closed door. I froze. There were no children in St. Delora. No pediatric unit. No living patients as far as I knew. But the voice, that voice announcing the code, it was mine. Replay distorted version of the announcement. Same words. Unmistakably Clara's tone. Code White, Ward 9, missing child. I ran to the central station, slamming the intercom switch. The board was off. The PA line wasn't even connected to power. Still, my voice echoed again, louder this time. Filling the halls. Code White, Ward 9, missing child female, age 7. My knees went weak. 7, 7. That number, it meant something. Heartbeat sound begins. Fast, nervous. I grabbed a flashlight and began checking the rooms one by one. Every door opened too easily, as if the hospital wanted me to go in. Room 913, empty. Room 914, empty. Room 915, where the wall had breathed. When I stepped inside, I saw it immediately. Small footprints smeared across the dusty floor. Bare feet. Tiny. They led to the far wall, the same one that had whispered before. And there, scrawled in something dark and wet, was a message written by a trembling hand. "She's still here." I heard a giggle, high-pitched, close, the kind of sound that should have been innocent, but wasn't. "Clara!" I spun around, flashlight trembling. A little girl stood in the doorway. Her hospital gown was too big for her, dragging along the floor like a ghost's shroud. Her hair was damp, sticking to her pale cheeks. "You forgot my name," she said softly. I tried to speak, but the words caught in my throat. There was something in her face, familiar, almost mine. "Who are you?" She smiled. A slow, broken smile. "You called me your miracle." Long pause. The flashlight flickers. The lights above us buzzed violently, and for a split second, she vanished. When the light steadied, I was alone again, except for the sound of small, wet footprints echoing down the hall. I chased them, past the nurse station, down the corridor where the lights dimmed one by one. Every turn led me deeper, until I reached a door I'd never seen before. Room 900. No plaque, no records. Just a single handprint smeared across the glass. I pushed it open. The room was small, filled with old equipment covered in sheets. And at the center, a hospital bed surrounded by broken toys. A small doll lay on the pillow, its eyes missing. On the chest of the doll, a patient tag. Patient name, Evelyn H. Relation, daughter, Clara H. Status, deceased. I dropped the flashlight. It rolled under the bed, and for a moment I saw something beneath. A reflection of my own face staring back at me. But younger, gentler, before the years of guilt. Then, the intercom screamed again. "Code white, missing child found. Body identified." The sound faded into static. Then silence, then a child's whisper. "You said I'd never feel pain again, Mommy." Heartbeat slows, then stops. A faint sigh escapes through the speakers. The lights went out, and somewhere in the dark I heard the soft sound of small feet walking away, back into the walls. Final line, whispered like a confession. Ward 9 doesn't lose its children. Clara, it just keeps them where they can't forget you. Sound cue. Child's laughter, distant, fading into the hum of the hospital. Episode 6, the name tag. They say a name is what keeps you real. Without it, you're just another face in the corridor. That night, I learned what it meant to lose your name. When I woke up in the nurse station, the clock read 3:17 a.m., the hour that never ended in Ward 9. The lights hummed in that low, throbbing way that makes you feel like you're inside someone else's heartbeat. My ID badge had fallen onto the floor. When I picked it up, I froze. The name printed beneath the photo wasn't mine. Evelyn H. I blinked, rubbed the plastic, even tried to laugh, but the letters stayed. I set it down, looked away for just a second, and when I looked back, it had changed again. Dr. Harold H., my father's name. Soft, static hum. I felt the air tighten, the way it does before a storm. The monitors in the ward flickered to life one by one, each screen showing my photo, my face, but every ID read something different. Patient, director, subject 47, deceased. And then, one of them whispered, my own photo on the screen, my lips moving. You don't belong to one name anymore. I tore the badge off and threw it across the floor. It slid under the supply closet door, and suddenly, the lock clicked open. Inside, the room was cold and damp, filled with the faint smell of bleach and metal. On the wall hung dozens of badges identical to mine, each with my face, each with a different name: nurse, doctor, patient, mother, daughter. One by one, I touched them, and with every name, a memory surged up like a wave breaking through my skull. Dr. Clara H. I was the one who led the trials. Nurse Clara H. I tried to undo them after the fire. Patient Clara H. I begged them to erase what I remembered, and Evelyn H., the child who died because of me. Rising hum. Her breathing becomes shaky. The air shimmered, and the reflection in the metal cabinet shifted. Not just one of me, dozens. Each version staring back with different expressions. Calm, terrified, grieving, furious. I whispered, which one of us is real? They all smiled, in unison. The ward decides. I ran. Down the corridor, past the patient files, past the empty beds that whispered my name. The walls pulsed faintly as I passed, almost like they were breathing again, keeping rhythm with my panic. At the end of the hall, a single door glowed under the emergency light. My badge, whichever name it was now, buzzed in my hand, vibrating like it was alive. When I held it to the scanner, the door unlocked with a soft click. Inside was a single mirror, or maybe not a mirror, a window. On the other side was a room that looked exactly like the nurse station I'd just left. Same chair, same files, same light flicker, except the reflection of me wasn't moving. She stood perfectly still, badge shining under the dim light. I leaned closer. Then she smiled first. "You're wearing my name now," she whispered. "It suits you." The lights went out. When they came back, I was staring at my reflection again. But the photo on my badge was hers, and the name below it read, Clara H., deceased. Sound cue, faint heart monitor tone. Then silence. I dropped the badge. It clattered against the floor, spinning until it lay face up, still glowing faintly. Then from the intercom, a soft voice spoke. "Welcome to Ward 9, Dr. Clara. Your shift never ended. You just changed names." Sound fades out into a single slow heartbeat then. Episode 7, the file room. I followed the hum. It wasn't a sound, really. It was more like a pulse, steady, rhythmic, dragging me somewhere deeper inside Ward 9. The hallway had no end, only doors, and each one had a nameplate. Each nameplate had my handwriting. When I stopped at the last door, the plaque read, Archives, authorized personnel only. The same warning was carved beneath it, in something that looked too dark to be ink. Door creaks open. The smell hit me first, old paper, iron, and the faint sweetness of decay. Rows upon rows of filing cabinets stretched beyond sight, stacked to the ceiling, their labels glowing faintly under the dying lights. And then I realized, each cabinet bore a date. Not of admission, not of death, but of memory. I opened the first drawer, a single folder. My name written in red inside, photos of me, smiling, working, sleeping, notes scribbled in the margins, patient responds to auditory stimuli. Memory reset unsuccessful. Subject still believes she is staff. My stomach turned cold. Paper flutters. A soft static hum. I opened another, and another. Every file, a different version of me. Clara H., head nurse. Clara H., volunteer subject. Clara H., phase 2 replacement. Clara H., lost. Each folder had the same handwriting, the same date crossed out, and a new one written below it. The newest folder was stamped today. I backed away. But as I turned, the drawers began to slide open one by one, on their own. The files fluttered out, not falling, but hovering, pages flipping as if invisible hands were reading them. The air thickened with whispers. Voices overlapped, some crying, some praying, some pleading. "Don't write me again. Please erase me this time. Let me die right." A single folder drifted toward me and stopped at chest level. The label glowed faintly. It read, Project Ward 9, the Memory Retention Experiment. I opened it. Inside was a document marked Top Secret for internal review. Objective: test if human consciousness can survive the erasure of personal identity. Method: reassign existing memories to new identities within controlled environment. Ward 9. Lead researcher Dr. Clara H. I froze. That was my signature at the bottom. Heartbeat rises. The realization hit like a fever. Ward 9 wasn't a hospital. It was a loop. A place where I had become both doctor and experiment, where each version of me was tested, rewritten, and forgotten. Something moved in the dark behind the cabinets. A figure. No footsteps, just a dragging sound, like paper scraping against the floor. A voice followed. Low, familiar. "You were never supposed to open that one." I turned. A woman stood there, half her face hidden in shadow. Her badge glowed faintly. Evelyn H. Patient 0, but her face was mine. She smiled, thin and sharp. "You tried to delete guilt, but guilt rewrote you instead. Every time you erase, we begin again." I stumbled back, clutching the folder. The cabinets around me began to pulse, beating in rhythm with my heart. The papers screamed, names, voices, dates, all merging into one endless echo. Clara, 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 Clara. I dropped to my knees, tearing at the folder, but the pages refused to rip. They melted instead, seeping through my fingers like ink, burning cold into my skin. The voice, my voice, whispered from all around. You wanted to cure memory. Instead, you became it. Static overtakes the sound. Silence. Then a faint heartbeat returns. When I looked up, the room was empty. Every cabinet closed. Every light off. Only one file remained open on the floor. It read, Ward 9, active subject, Clara H. status, unable to forget. The paper began to hum softly, folding itself shut, and as the door sealed behind me, the intercom clicked alive. Memory reset initiated. Sound cue, sharp tone, then complete silence. Episode 8, the reset, you don't feel it happen. The reset, it's not like dying. It's like someone gently pressing the delete key on your soul, one memory at a time. When I opened my eyes, the world looked too clean. The corridor gleamed. The beds were neatly made. No stains, no whispers. Ward 9 looked new. For the first time in months or years, I didn't feel afraid. I didn't remember why I should. I found my name tag lying on the counter. Clara H. Nurse. Just that. Simple. Harmless. But when I pinned it to my chest, the metal felt hot, like it had been waiting for me. Soft. Rhythmic ticking in the background. I walked through the ward, checking each patient room. Every bed was empty. Every monitor beeped in perfect rhythm, as if the patients were invisible but still alive. And then, on the wall at the far end, I noticed something written beneath the white paint. At first, just a smudge. Then, as I stared, the words surfaced like bruises. If you remember, it restarts. I blinked, and suddenly everything flickered. The clean white walls dissolved into peeling paint. The monitors screamed in static. A stench of burnt plastic filled the air, and across the room someone was standing. She wore my uniform. She had my badge, but her face. It was smiling the way a mirror smiles before it shatters. You shouldn't have seen that, she said softly. You're supposed to forget before the cracks show. I stepped back, dizzy. Who are you? She tilted her head. You. After the last reset failed, the world around us began to twitch, like an image buffering. Chair shifting an inch, lights stuttering, reality looping, sound distortion increases. Voices flooded the hallway, overlapping like echoes in a tunnel. Reset successful. Patient still retains self-awareness. Prepare for another iteration. The other me, the smiling one, walked closer. They've been doing this since you died in the fire, Clara. They copied your mind to keep Ward 9 alive. I shook my head, but the floor rippled under my feet like liquid glass. No, I survived. You thought you did, she smiled. But the original you burned. I'm what's left. A reconstruction, heartbeat sound, distorted. The ward isn't haunted, she whispered. It's just you replaying yourself, trying to remember why you started it. I screamed at her, at the lights, at the static. Then who's resetting me? Who's controlling this? She leaned in close, her eyes empty and endless. You are. And then the walls cracked open. The entire ward folded inward like a collapsing lung. Files, monitors, beds, everything being sucked into a single glowing point. The sound was deafening. On the floor, I saw a control panel blinking red. Reset in progress. User, Clara H. The other me grabbed my wrist. If you finish it, you'll lose everything again. But if you stop it, she smiled sadly, you'll remember what you did. Countdown begins. 10. 9. I stared at the console. My hand hovered over the switch. 8. 7. The ward flickered between versions. Burning, clean, flooded, empty. Each second, a new reality trying to overwrite the old. 6. Voices screamed my name. Some begged me to stop. Some begged me to continue. 4. 3. The other me whispered in my ear, her voice trembling. This is your punishment, Clara. Every reset is just you refusing to forgive yourself. Purr. 1. I closed my eyes, and instead of pressing the reset, I pulled the power cord. Silence. The hum stopped. The lights went out. For the first time, there was nothing. But in that nothing, I heard a single voice. Small, fragile, like a child trying to pray. Clara, are you ready to remember me now? The sound of a match striking, a flame flickering to life, and on the wall, written in blood, Evelyn. Sound fades into a low heartbeat that doesn't stop. Episode 9. Evelyn's voice. They say when you die inside a place, your voice stays there, not your ghost. Just the echo of the last thing you were afraid to say. And tonight, Ward 9 was full of echoes. When the lights returned after the blackout, the ward didn't look like a hospital anymore. It looked like a memory halfway burned, walls peeled like old photographs. The air shimmered with heat that wasn't there. Every breath tasted like smoke. I followed the faint sound of humming through the corridor, a child's melody, one I knew, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. My throat tightened. I turned the corner, and there she was, sitting cross-legged on the floor, her hair matted, her dress the color of ash. A child, maybe 8 years old. Her back was to me, but I didn't need to see her face to know who she was. "Evelyn," I whispered. Soft pause. The humming stops. She turned, and for a moment, just one, she smiled the way she used to in the old photographs. "Before the fire, you remembered me," she said. Her voice was too calm, too knowing. I knelt slowly, my hands shaking. "I never forgot." She tilted her head, eyes bright as molten glass. "That's not true. You made the machine so you could forget." My breath hitched. "I was trying to fix the damage. By erasing it?" She interrupted, her voice rising. "You wanted to erase me." The hallway flickered red, the sound of flames building in the distance. Smoke seeped from under the doors like shadows learning to breathe. "I was trying to stop the pain," I said, the words trembling out of me. But even as I spoke, I could hear the truth underneath them. "No, Clara, you were trying to stop the guilt." Evelyn stood. Her small bare feet left black prints on the white tiles. Each step closer made the lights dim. "You told me to wait," she whispered. "You said you'd come back for me. But the ceiling fell and you ran." Tears burned my eyes. "I didn't run. You watched it happen." The world tilted. The floor became the ceiling. The corridor stretched like melting film. Behind her, the ward transformed into that night, flames roaring, alarms screaming, and there I was, across the hall, holding a clipboard, frozen, watching the fire through the glass, watching her scream, sound cue, roaring fire. Then heartbeat. I fell to my knees. "Evelyn, please. I didn't mean to leave you." She stepped closer, crouching before me, the firelight painting her face in shades of sorrow and fury. "You didn't just leave me. You built a cage out of what was left of me, out of my voice." Her eyes glowed with something ancient. "Every whisper in this ward is me. The system, the resets, the endless nights. My memories keeping you alive so you'd remember." I shook my head, choking on guilt. "I wanted to bring you back." She smiled sadly. "You did, but only as a punishment." The fire dimmed. The air cooled. For the first time, she looked small again, human. "Do you still hear me, Clara?" I nodded, tears running freely now. "Then let me rest." The world around us began to fade. Monitors flatlined one by one. The hum of Ward 9 slowed, as if the building itself was finally exhaling. Evelyn reached out, her hand hovering inches from mine. "If you forgive yourself, the ward will stop." I hesitated. "What happens to you?" She smiled, a soft, impossible thing. "Maybe I'll finally sleep. Maybe you will too." Our fingers touched. The fire vanished. The lights died, and in the dark, her voice whispered one last time. "Good night, Clara." Soft static fades into the sound of gentle rain. When I opened my eyes, Ward 9 was empty. No hum, no files, no machines. Just a single name tag on the floor. Evelyn H. Freed. I closed my eyes and listened to the quiet. For once, it didn't scare me. Heartbeat slows. Stops. Episode 10. The Last Shift. Sound cue. Soft rain against metal. The hum of fluorescent lights slowly powering back on. A faint echo of a heart monitor. One beat every few seconds. When I opened my eyes, I was back at the nurse station. Everything was still. Ward 9 looked empty, peaceful. The kind of silence that doesn't belong to the living. The monitors were off. The beds were made. The air was clean, too clean, like a world after the rain had washed everything away. But something was different. On the counter lay two things, a single white keycard and a handwritten note. The note read, "Every reset must end with a choice. Delete the ward, or stay to keep the memories alive. E." Soft heartbeat. I ran my fingers over the keycard. It pulsed faintly, like it had a heartbeat of its own. When I held it up, the corridor lights flickered to life, revealing a path of glowing arrows on the floor, leading to the core room. The core room was the heart of Ward 9. I had designed it myself, years ago, to store every patient's consciousness during the experiments. Every memory ever recorded in this place was trapped there. Now it waited for me. The door opened without resistance. Inside was a single machine, a large cylindrical chamber filled with white light. Cables ran from it like veins. And within the glass, faint shapes moved, dozens, maybe hundreds. Faces, half-formed, flickering in and out like reflections on water. The voices began as whispers. "Don't leave us. We only exist because of you. Stay." I pressed my hands to the glass, trembling. These were the echoes of every patient who died in Ward 9, and maybe every version of me. Then I saw her. A faint outline, smaller than the rest, standing at the center of the light. "Evelyn, you came back," she said softly. Her voice was calm now, almost gentle. I nodded, tears already spilling. "I don't know how to end this." "You already do," she said. "The system's waiting for your final command." She pointed toward the console beside me. Two buttons glowed faintly under the glass. Erase all and rebuild Ward 9. The choice was simple and impossible. If I erased everything, all the voices, all the data, all the trapped fragments, they'd be free. But it would mean erasing myself too. I was just one more recording after all. If I rebuilt the ward, I could keep them alive, keep her alive. But the loop would begin again, and the guilt would never end. Sound cue, distant thunder. The machine hums louder. Evelyn stepped closer to the glass, pressing her tiny palm against it. "You built this place to keep me here," she whispered. "But I don't want you to stay in the fire anymore." I tried to speak, but my voice cracked. "I don't want to lose you again." Her smile was sad, older than her years. "You won't. You'll just let me go." The monitors came alive. Images of the past flooded the walls, the fire, the tests, the resets, the screams. And then, beneath all of it, Evelyn's face, calm and waiting. I looked down at the console. My reflection stared back, pale, flickering, not quite human anymore. Maybe I never was. Maybe I'd been data all along. Heartbeat slows. I whispered, "No more," and pressed, "Erase all." Sound cue, alarms, machinery powering down. The hum begins to fade. The core flared bright, so bright it drowned everything. The voices rose in one final chorus, not in pain, but relief. "Thank you. Good night. Goodbye." Evelyn's face was the last to fade. "Sleep well, Clara." And then silence. Pure, endless silence. When I opened my eyes again, I was standing outside. The hospital was gone. The rain was still falling, gentle and real this time. I stood where Ward 9 used to be. Only an empty field remained, covered in white lilies. I reached into my pocket. The name tag was still there, but the letters had changed. Clara H. released. For the first time, I smiled. Soft piano begins to play in the distance. As I turned to leave, the wind carried a faint echo, a child's voice laughing softly, fading into the rain. "Good night, Nurse Clara." Heartbeat stops. Fade to silence. Episode 11, The Empty Field. The place didn't look haunted. It looked forgotten. Just an empty field on the outskirts of the city, fenced off with rusted wire and a sign that said, "Property of St. Hollow Medical. Do not enter." But I'd been working demolition long enough to know. The places they warn you not to enter are usually the ones with something worth finding. My name's David Kerrigan. I've been clearing sites for 20 years. Factories, churches, hospitals. This one was different. There wasn't supposed to be anything left here. No foundations, no debris. Just grass. But the soil felt hollow, like there was something breathing underneath. And that radio static crackles softly. It had been hissing ever since I stepped onto the field. No signal, no voice. Just that low hum, like someone whispering under their breath, just beyond the frequency of thought. By noon, the rain had rolled in, cold and silver. I started digging where the ground dipped. The mud was softer there. My shovel hit metal. At first I thought it was pipework, until I cleared more of it and saw glass. Thick, curved glass, blackened from the inside, a chamber window. My chest tightened. I'd seen schematics like this before, back when St. Hollow was still standing. Ward 9, the place that burned itself out. I knelt, brushing mud away from a small brass panel near the glass. The letters were almost gone, but I could make them out. Core access terminal. Below it, a keycard slot, and beside it, stuck in the dirt like a gravestone, was a faded name tag. Clara H. Released. Radio crackle grows louder. Faint voice fragment surfacing. Good night, nurse. I froze. The voice was faint, distant, childlike, but clear enough that I could make out the words. I tapped the radio, thinking maybe it was interference. But the voice came again, closer this time. He's here, I turned, scanning the field. Nothing but rain and fog. Then the hum under the soil grew louder. It wasn't my imagination anymore. The earth vibrated. I pried open the panel. Inside, the wires were still glowing faintly, blue, alive, like veins under skin. How could anything still have power after 20 years? I should have stopped there, but curiosity, that old curse, pulled me in deeper. There was a single button inside the panel. It read, "Restart system check," and below it, in faint handwriting, a signature. Clara H. Sound cue. Wind stills. The rain stops midair. Silence. When I pressed it, the world held its breath. Then the radio screamed, not static, voices, hundreds of them overlapping, laughing, crying, praying. "We're still here. Don't turn it on. Please don't wake her." The ground split open beneath me, light bursting from the cracks like veins of lightning. I stumbled back, shielding my eyes, and in that light I saw her, not solid, just a shimmer, a shape of a woman in a nurse's uniform, eyes hollow but kind. "Turn it off," she said softly. "Please, let it stay buried." Her lips moved slower than her voice, like reality was struggling to keep her together. "If it wakes again, it won't be me this time." Machine hum intensifies. The field shakes. I reached for the panel, but the button was gone. In its place, the display flickered to life. System boot, Ward 9, memory network. Initializing, he shouted into the storm. "Who are you?" The nurse smiled faintly. "No one remembers us right, Mr. Kerrigan." And then her eyes turned white. "But we remember you." Sound cue, deafening hum. Rain resumes in reverse. Then silence. When I woke up, it was night. The hole in the ground had sealed itself. The field was quiet again. My radio was dead, except for one brief whisper before it went silent forever. "Welcome back to Ward 9. One long beep. Static fades. Episode 12. The Voice. Beneath, you ever hear a voice that doesn't sound alive but doesn't sound dead either? Like it's stuck between channels, waiting for you to stop breathing long enough to listen. That's what she sounded like. It's been 3 days since I found the field. 3 days since I hit that damned button. I told myself it was just power lines under the soil, old signals bleeding through. But every night at 3:17 a.m. the radio turns itself on. No static. No music, just breathing. Slow, deliberate, in rhythm with mine. And then, David, her voice, soft, measured, familiar in a way that made my bones ache. "You should have let it sleep." Sound cue, the faint buzz of fluorescent light. A low heartbeat in the background. At first I thought it was a dream, some leftover echo of the field. But then she started answering me. I asked her name. She said it didn't matter. Names fade when the walls do. I used to have one. You dug it up. The way she said it, it wasn't accusation. It was regret. That morning I drove back to the site. Only, it wasn't there anymore. The field was gone. In its place stood the faint outline of foundations, a concrete skeleton half buried beneath fog. And on one of the slabs, carved by hand, were 3 words, "We still remember." Low drone begins, a sound like a distant hospital ventilator. I touched the carving, and the ground pulsed, like something alive was breathing under the concrete. "Don't dig again," she whispered through the radio, though it was in my truck, miles away. "Every time you listen, we wake a little more." I tried to shut the radio off, but the knob wouldn't move. It hummed, then spoke again, A different voice this time. A child's. It's cold here. Mom says don't talk to him. The breath left my chest. Who's your mom? I asked. Silence. Then the woman again, sharper, fractured, like the voice was coming from inside my skull instead of through a speaker. She doesn't remember dying. None of them do. A high-frequency tone cut through the air, the kind that drills behind your eyes. The field, the fog, the rain, they all blurred into one long pulse, and beneath it, I could hear movement, metal, chains, beds being dragged across the ground. Sound cue, echo of footsteps on tile. Though we're outdoors, I looked around, and the world had changed. The fog had thickened into walls. The smell of antiseptic filled my lungs, and when I turned, I saw them. Dozens of hospital beds wheeled out into the open, all facing the same direction, toward me. Each one occupied, each patient's face hidden under a white sheet. But the radios beside every bed were turned on, whispering in perfect unison. You brought us back. You made the ward remember. Now it wants you to stay. Heart rate monitor beeping, slow crescendo. The air cracked. A voice rose above the others, the same one from before. Calm. Tragic. David, listen to me. You can't save us. The system isn't broken. It's hungry. I fell to my knees, clutching my head. The whispers became a single note, a shrill feedback. Through it, I saw her shape forming again. The nurse, Clara. But her eyes weren't hollow anymore. They were full. Too full, like they'd seen too much. You're tuned to us now, she said softly. You opened the channel. And the ward doesn't forget its frequencies. Radio distortion rises, almost musical, like a choir trapped in static. When I woke, it was morning. The field was empty again. My truck door was open, mud everywhere, and my radio, cracked in half. But etched into the dashboard, in the faint shimmer of burned plastic, were words that hadn't been there before. Ward 9, signal received. And for a moment, just before the radio went completely silent, I swear I heard her voice one last time. Almost tender. Don't listen again. David, the next broadcast won't call your name. Sound fades out, static, heartbeat, then nothing. Episode 13, The Frequency of the Dead. You think silence is safe. That if you turn off the radio, unplug the cord, bury the wires, the voices can't reach you, but the dead don't need speakers. They only need a frequency. 3 nights since the field vanished. 3 nights since I last heard her voice, but Ward 9 hasn't gone quiet. Not really. It's just changed the way it speaks. Now every time I walk into a room, the lights flicker twice. Every time I pick up my phone, there's a brief hiss before the dial tone. And when I fall asleep, I dream in static, corridors made of white noise, doors that open to nothing but sound. Last night, I woke up to the TV on, snow screen, no signal. But there, hidden inside the static, was a faint whisper. Not a word, a number. 999. It pulsed in rhythm, like Morse code. I wrote it down half asleep on a napkin. 917. That frequency didn't exist anymore. Not on any modern radio band. But when I tuned my old transceiver to it, sound cue, slow static rising, then cutting to soft breathing. Someone exhaled on the other end. David. It was her again. Clara. Her voice sounded distant, like it had to crawl through layers of snow to reach me. We've found a way out. They're all waking now. My pulse raced. Who's waking? The ones who still think they're alive. The lights went out. My radio glowed a pale blue, the same color I'd seen in the soil beneath the field. And then, one by one, other radios in my house started turning on. On the shelf. In the garage. Even the one I hadn't used in a decade, all of them tuned themselves to 9.17 megahertz. The air vibrated with whispers. Overlapping voices, like a crowd forming in the dark. Some pleaded, some prayed, some laughed in broken patterns. Ward 9 welcomes all signals. Stay tuned. She's bringing the transmission. Sound cue, distorted hallway ambience, flickering fluorescent lights. I couldn't breathe. The static grew louder until it became a sound I could feel, pressing against my chest like invisible hands, and then the voices stopped. Just one remained. A calm male voice I hadn't heard before. This is Director Harold H. of St. Hollow Medical. If you are hearing this broadcast, the memory containment has failed. I froze. That name, Harold H., was on one of the ID tags Clara found. The network is no longer confined to the physical structure, the voice continued. Ward 9 has reached signal phase. He paused. We told her it couldn't think without a host. We were wrong. The sound warped. Someone began overlapping his voice. Clara. I tried to stop it, David. But the system isn't just data anymore. It remembers emotions, fear, regret. She hesitated. And now it's remembering hunger. My breath caught. Clara, what do you mean? It's broadcasting through you. I looked down. My skin was trembling. Tiny blue lines, the same glow from the field, and pulsed under my veins. The hum of the radios matched my heartbeat exactly. You shouldn't have listened again, she whispered. Now the dead know your name. Sound cue. Intense static storm, overlapping voices. I screamed at the radio, smashing it onto the floor, but it didn't break. The sound kept pouring out, even from the shattered pieces. Then, my phone buzzed. A notification blinked on the cracked screen. Live transmission, 917 MHz. Now Streamingy stared in horror as my reflection flickered in the dark glass. Behind me, for just a moment, I saw the outline of hospital beds, row after row, and my reflection smiled back. Welcome to the broadcast, David. Everything cuts to silence. When I came to, the house was empty. No radios, no static, just a faint smell of antiseptic. But on my TV, burned into the glass, were the last words I'd heard from the signal. Ward 9, where the dead remember the living. And in the quiet, I realized it wasn't transmitting anymore. It was receiving. Sound cue, a final heartbeat. Fading into soft static. Episode 14, the return broadcast. It started at midnight. I was asleep, or thought I was. The first warning came from my neighbor's car. The radio inside it turned on by itself. Static. Then a voice, soft at first but unmistakable. David. Then the entire city seemed awake to Ward 9's signal. Street radios, emergency broadcast channels, even digital assistants all chimed in, whispering the same words. Do you remember me? Sound cue, static merging with faint hospital ambience, echoing beeps, distant screams. I ran outside. The fog had returned. Not the gentle fog from before. This one was alive, pulsating with electricity and sound. Streetlights flickered in rhythm with the hum of radios, as if the city itself had become a speaker. And everywhere I looked, screens glowed with a single message. Ward 9, active. I checked my transceiver. 917 MHz, still broadcasting. But it wasn't me controlling it, it was her. David! Clara's voice came through, calm but urgent. They're listening now. The dead, the memories, everyone you ignored. I turned on the TV, on every channel. The broadcast was the same. Corridors, beds, patients, shadows shifting, blinking in and out, and then I saw faces I recognized. Some were Clara, some were Evelyn, some were people I didn't know. Ghosts I hadn't met but somehow remembered. People started responding. From apartment windows, voices called back. From phones, whispers replied. The broadcast wasn't just transmitting, it was pulling them in, and the first disappearance happened in my own building. Sound cue, breaking glass, shriek. My neighbor, an older woman, had been watching the broadcast on her tablet. One moment she was there, the next she screamed and vanished. The tablet fell, shattered, but the screen glowed with static. And I swear, in the snow-like fuzz, her eyes were staring directly at me. Heartbeat rises, distorted rhythm, overlapping static. The city was chaos. Cars stopped mid-road. Traffic lights blinked randomly. Everyone holding a device, radios, phones, TVs, froze, then joined in the broadcast. We remember the living, Clara's voice whispered, soft but omnipresent. And we call them home. I ran through the streets. I saw my own reflection in a shop window. Except, it wasn't just me. It was Clara, Evelyn, dozens of blurred faces layered over mine, trapped, screaming, pleading. I fell to my knees. What do you want from them? I shouted into the hum. We want them to hear, to remember, to understand what it means to be trapped in a loop, a life erased, rebuilt, forgotten, and reborn. The sound of hundreds of whispers overlapped with the static. Names, dates, memories. They spoke of fire, of guilt, of silence, of hope. Everything that had ever existed inside Ward 9. Sound cue, building crescendo. Static, overlapping voices, distant sirens. I had a choice, or maybe an illusion of one. The transceiver pulsed in my hands. If I tried to shut it down, the broadcast would go rogue. If I left it, the world would continue to vanish into Ward 9's memory network. And then I heard it. A child's laughter. "David," Evelyn said softly. "If you can hear me, it means you are still alive. But they need more than your voice. They need your courage." Courage. I looked around. The city was frozen in a pulse of light and sound. The dead, the forgotten, the erased, all reaching through the frequencies. I understood then. This was no longer just Ward 9. It was everywhere it could reach. I took a deep breath, and I spoke into the transceiver. Not commands, not questions, just one word: home. The static flattened into silence. The air vibrated, then stilled. One by one, devices powered down. The fog receded. The city lights returned to normal, and on the radio, just before it went dead, Clara's voice whispered, "Thank you, David, for remembering us." Sound cue, soft rainfall, wind, faint heartbeat fading into nothing. I walked home in silence. No fog, no whispers, no broadcast, but when I passed the empty lot where the field had been, I saw one thing glimmer in the soil, a single name tag. Clara H. Listened. Fade out. Silence. Episode 15. The final reception. The world didn't just wake up. It shattered. I woke to the sound of radios blaring simultaneously across the city. Windows shook. Car alarms screamed. Streetlights blinked in rhythm with the heartbeat of Ward 9. And then I heard her voice, Clara's, omnipresent, layered, calm and terrifying at the same time. "David." "It's time." I ran through the streets. The fog had returned, thick and glowing, suffused with static. The dead weren't walking. They weren't screaming. They were broadcasting. Faces flickered on every reflective surface, glass, puddles, metal. Shadows twisted into bed shapes. Voices whispered my name, thousands of them. "Remember us. We're still here. Bring us home." My heartbeat matched the frequency. The world itself seemed to pulse with the rhythm of Ward 9. I reached the empty field where it all began. The soil was trembling. A pale blue glow seeped through the cracks. I could feel the network of memories beneath the earth, growing, hungry, aware. "You can stop this," Clara's voice said softly. "But it will cost you everything." Sound cue. Low hum intensifies, overlapping whispers, wind gusts. The transceiver in my hands pulsed like a living thing. I realized then, the broadcast was feeding off me. My fear, my memory, my choices. The network had learned to use the living as antennas. I thought of Evelyn. I thought of the people trapped in Ward 9. I thought of myself, alone, trembling, but still alive. "You must choose," Clara said. "Erase it or let it live. But if you let it live," her voice faltered, "you'll never walk among the living again." The ground shook violently. A single bed surfaced, hovering above the soil, surrounded by a halo of static. Inside was her, Clara, not a ghost, not a reflection. She was there, in the network, waiting. I thought of pressing the button, the one I had avoided before. Erase all. I knew what it meant. Destroy Ward 9. Free the memories. Save the city, and lose her forever. But what if she was still alive in some sense? What if pressing it meant killing her twice? "You're already part of us," she whispered. "Stay and you'll understand. Leave and it ends. For all of us," I swallowed. My fingers hovered. The network pulsed faster. The city trembled. Radios screamed. Devices everywhere played the static choir. I realized I couldn't run anymore. Sound cue, escalating static and heartbeat, overlapping voices in unison. I made my choice. I pressed the button. The light was blinding. The ground trembled beneath me. Every voice screamed, pain, relief, love, regret, all at once. And then silence. The fog lifted. The streets were empty. The city hummed normally again. I opened my eyes. The field was gone. Only dirt and lilies remained, glowing faintly in moonlight. I reached down. Nothing except a single name tag, half buried in the soil. Clara H. Released. A soft breeze carried a faint whisper. Thank you, David, for remembering us. Sound cue, soft rainfall, gentle wind, distant heartbeats fading. I sat there for hours. No static, no broadcasts, no whispers, just quiet. And in that quiet, I realized something. Ward 9 hadn't disappeared. It had released itself. The memories, the guilt, the echoes, all freed. Even Clara, I was still alive. The dead were gone, but the field, the empty field, would always remember me. Some things, I whispered, can never be truly erased. And as the wind rustled the lilies, I knew one truth. Memory is a ghost that follows you, whether you hear it or not. Even in silence it lives, fade out. The sound of a single heartbeat slowing to nothing.
Epilogue. Echoes of Ward 9. The city had returned to normal, or at least, it looked like it had. People walked streets without noticing the faint hum that lingered beneath every electronic device. Traffic lights blinked normally. Cell phones rang and received calls as expected. Yet somewhere, underneath it all, a pulse remained subtle, almost imperceptible, like a heartbeat buried in concrete. I walked through the empty field where Ward 9 once stood. The lilies swayed in the gentle breeze. I knelt and touched the soil. Cold, normal, safe, and yet, the faintest shimmer of blue light flickered under my fingertips. Hello, David. I froze. Not from fear, just recognition. We're still here, watching. The voice was soft, more like a memory than reality. Clara, Evelyn, faces of the patients once trapped, all whispering at once, overlapping in harmony. I exhaled slowly. They were gone, and yet, not gone. Freed, but leaving behind a signature, a ghost in the system, a ripple in the world. Sound cue, distant radios crackle, soft city ambience. Weeks passed. At night, I could hear fragments of their voices in old radios or broken speakers. Nothing complete, just fleeting words, memories, caught in static. Remember, don't forget, thank you. Some nights, I dreamt of Ward 9's corridors, not terrifying anymore, just empty halls lined with beds, pale sheets fluttering in windless currents, a quiet hospital of memories. The first sign that Ward 9 had left more than whispers came unexpectedly. I was at the train station, reading a newspaper. A headline, "Orphanage fires suspected no survivors." Nothing seemed unusual until I glanced at the crowd. Children with names I recognized, some on the wards decades ago, walked freely among the commuters. Their eyes held memories, but their faces were slightly off. "We remember you, David." I looked up to see a fleeting shimmer, like heat waves rising off concrete, and then it vanished. Sound cue, faint hospital monitor beep under city ambience, growing, then fading. Months later, I moved to a quieter neighborhood. Even here, Ward 9 left traces. A television flickered without electricity. A laptop opened to a blank document with one line written in old-school typeface. "We were here." No signature, no explanation, just acknowledgement. Sometimes, I wonder if I'm still part of it. If every time I hear a whisper on the radio, it's not the world, but me transmitting the memory. We're listening. Clara's voice once said, "The thought unsettles me, but strangely comforts me." I carried the ward story in my mind, a silent witness to its release, a living record of what was lost and saved. Sound cue, distant rain over field, faint echo of heartbeat slowing. I returned to the empty field one last time. The soil was soft, the lilies taller than before. A single name tag rested on the ground. Evelyn H. Free picked it up. No voice came this time, no pulse, no whisper, no glow, just silence. Yet the memory remained, not in the soil, not in the city, but in me. And as I walked away, I realized the truth. Ward 9 had left the world, but it had not left me. Its echoes lived in the devices, the streets, the air, a reminder that memory cannot be erased, only carried. "We'll always remember you, David." I smiled faintly, feeling the weight of their gratitude, their existence, and the inevitability of memory itself. And for the first time in years, I felt peace. Fade out, gentle wind, rain, and the softest echo of hospital monitors fading into silence.